It's our guest, Harry. How are you today?
Hi, Chris. I'm really good, thank you. Very busy. What with work to do with Viperio. So yeah, just looking forward to the experience, and then cracking back on with work.
No, most definitely. And I mean, you're still at uni, so I mean, how's the uni work been on top of all that as well?
Shambolic to say the least. No, we're schmoving. We're getting there slowly but surely.
No, great to hear, Harry. And I mean, like as most people are aware, people in very similar situations, sort of balancing
Mm.
uni and League of Legends at the same time can be quite challenging.
It can be
But
tricky.
as I said, we've got a lot to get through
Mhm.
today. But I mean, a great place to start is you, Harry. Obviously, you joined us in the start of the spring season
Yep.
as an assistant coach, sort of coming from those student leagues and then coming into the official UKI hierarchy. And after doing a full season with us, you've now gone into a head coach role. So
Mhm.
how's that jump been? Has it been something that you've been wanting for a while? Is it a challenge that you're excited to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be honest, like I always aspire to be as good as I can be. I think like the head coach role is definitely something that I was aspiring to. But that's not to say that the previous head coach, like I think Dan did a really phenomenal job. He was really good at what he was good at. But truth be told, I think I bring more of the qualities needed in a head coach. Like for the most part, like a lot of my job as assistant coach was, to do drafting, to do a lot of the prep work for every game. So the majority of the things that I was doing, I think like Dan probably should have been doing. But such is life now. Like that's in the past. I'm really happy with the appointment of being head coach, especially given our promotion to the UKLC. I think it's a really good opportunity for both me and my team of staff and just the team in general to be able to really show our merit.
Because a lot of people may not be aware, but Dan, who was our previous head coach, he is still here, but he's moved
Yeah.
into a performance coach role. And I think, as you've kind of illustrated nicely, a lot of Dan's strengths are around things like sort of player mindset, how to be the best player. But a lot of your work has been very game related, as you've said, things
Mm.
like draft. You played a very active role within our summer split. So having that little shuffle around it probably plays to both of your strengths a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, with the news that we had this off season, sort of moving into the UKLC, obviously you were expecting to go into the EL. How's that
Mm.
been? Sort of getting that jump up
Um,
unexpectedly.
so like before like any of that news was brought to light, obviously like I had set my goals and aspirations. So with our manager, like I discussed, well, my aspirations is always to do as well as is humanly possible. So I saw like how good we had been in the UKEL last split, and I had set my goals very high. Like I knew that I wanted to win the whole split, the regular split. I knew that I wanted to win promotions, and I knew that I wanted to win promotion to the UKLC in as convincing a fashion as is humanly possible. Um, I think, to be honest, that was a very, very achievable goal with the players that we have. Like I think it would have been more than comfortable. Props to X7 because I know that they're looking very, very good right now. Props to Resolve Academy, who at the time were going to be playing in the UKEL. They would have been a really scary team.
Hmm.
But I still think like we would have been more than up to the challenge. But obviously moving up to the UKLC, I had the intention of setting my sights on that after we'd won the UKEL. But that's come sooner than expected. But to be honest, it hasn't changed anything. Like I have an innate competitiveness about me that I want to win. I want to be the best, and I'll stop at nothing in order to achieve those ends. So going into the UKLC, I'm still of the mindset that I want to win. I want to win it all. I'm not content to sit back and have other people look at Viperio and say, oh, that they don't deserve to be here because they got off the back of a technicality. I don't want people to judge us based on what's come before. I only want people to look at us and say, wow, Viperio are a really significantly strong team. So obviously my aspirations are very high, and I'll work very hard to achieve them as good as I possibly can. And I know that the rest of the team is working towards those ends as well.
Hmm. And I mean, just extend on from what you've said obviously the players are obviously working really hard to improve in their game. But
Hmm.
one of the personal pieces of feedback I've had on you, Harry, is that you're also very proactive in trying to improve yourself as a coach. I've heard
Yeah.
stories of you doing things like uh, sort of online courses in order to find out how you can better help the players. And
Mhm.
I think to a lot of people, having like attractive coaches like yourself has been a really big selling point this season. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I'm of the position where I'd sooner like downplay the things that I do. Obviously, like my job is as a coach is to sort of step back, let the players take the limelight. I think people like me are necessary to teams, though. You know, I don't think like I'd use Dan as quite a good example of this because he only wanted to improve the players. Like he didn't have any aspirations in terms of actually winning competitions. You know, he was of the opinion where if you went into a game and you lost, that's fine, because losing obviously is an opportunity to work towards success. Because losing also like exposes a lot of your weaknesses better than when you're winning.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's really important to have people like me to understand the psychology behind players, and that's something that that I'm working towards. I'm always like looking for opportunities to better myself in order of understanding my role, of understanding what I need to do, and understanding like first and foremost what I need to do for my players. Because at the end of the day, I think the coach is almost like the backbone of the team. I do a lot of the prep. I do a lot of the drafting. Like I do a lot of the stylistic things in terms of like team dynamic. Um, and it's not all me. All the power to Dan, all the power to Calvin as well, my assistant coach, and all the power to Alan as well, who does a lot in terms of pushing the players and pushing myself. So all in all, like I think yeah, it's important to have people like me to who are very dedicated to the role. But I think just naturally I'd be inclined to say, like my role is kind of it takes second place to the actual players themselves.
Yeah. I mean, sort of starting to touch on the players. So we've had an interesting off season in that, as we mentioned earlier, we were preparing for the UKL and then get the
Mhm.
step up to the UKLC. Do you think that's had an impact on how our competitiveness this season, or do you think we're still in a good position going into this upper
I,
end?
I think we were always in a really healthy mindset coming into it. Like I think everybody joined the team wanting to win. Everybody wanted the opportunity to go out and prove themselves. I think Division 3, Division 2, it doesn't matter. It's tantamount to the same thing. Like everybody just wants to win. I'm no different, and I know that all of the players are very dedicated. I think there might be like nerves here and there, but if there are, people show like people hide it very well, because we always act with professionalism and we always act with an air of confidence that whoever, be it in scrims or be it in officials, it doesn't matter. Like we will go out and we will try our best.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, so long as like we are working really hard towards like the goals that we want to achieve, I think that doesn't matter. I think it's just one of those things where, how to say, I think it's just very important that we all stay focused on our goal,
Yeah.
and our goal at the end of the day is to win. And that's in terms of like my player selection, that's sort of being at the heart, is somebody that replicates my desire, my passion towards succeeding,
Hmm.
especially in a field where esports is very competitive. And I think like if you want to be the best like I do, then you have to be willing to put in 110%, and that's what everybody gives me on a daily basis, and I'm really proud of the players for that.
Hmm. And I think one of the things that people have been quite positive towards us about is the fact that, well, this season we've asked players to commit to 2 seasons and work with the
Yeah,
coaches in order to see that improvement. Is that something that you're quite happy to see, to work with players over an extended period of time?
I'm delighted with that, to be honest with you. I think it's so important. um, I think one of the benefits of seeing things from a student perspective is I've seen teams. So just take Gregis, for instance, who was a development AD carry for a really long time, and then came into the relegation tournament and absolutely smashed it. Like he was such a key player for Viperio at the time. And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that he's had 3, I think, years of competitive experience with his university team. And, his team did so well purely because they've been together for a long time, like synergistically, it's such a marvel. Like I don't understand how teams don't really subscribe to the fact that they have to keep rosters together in order to achieve the same results.
Yeah.
Like so many teams are willing to sort of like throw the baby out with the bath in many regards, because they throw out, or they don't throw away, but they lose a lot of players. They don't act to retain them. And then it's sort of a nightmare for, like, from a staffing perspective, because then you've got to rebuild everything. And I feel very lucky that we've got Johnny and Haas back, because they were such key like enforcers of the way that me and Dan wanted to play last split, that they're sort of leading the charge, and they lead by example in terms of like how we're teaching the game that should be played, which like how we're coaching and all of that jazz. So I'm really, really happy that we've got the opportunity to show how important it is to keep players on for an extended period of time.
And I mean, with that answer brings us really nicely on to one of the more important topics of this stream. So this Wednesday is roster lock. So we've currently announced 6 players out of a possible max 10. So I think what would be great now, Harry, is if we go through all the players that we've announced in order from when we announced them to now, and just get a bit of your insight on what those players are like, what it's like to work with them, and sort of your thoughts going into the season. So the first player that we announced this split was Dakin, and for a bit of context, Dakin played for us in season 1 of the UKL, and although he didn't play any or all of the matches that season, he was on that roster which won us our first UKL title. I mean, when it comes to Dakin, sort of what key qualities stand out to you? What makes Dakin stand out from the crowd?
I think, to be honest, like what really struck me with Dakin was his people management. Like he's really good at sort of being the main focal point of the team. Like he was really good in that respect. He's displayed a lot of qualities that we really liked from our previous jungler. But he also had other skills, which was, he had like an ease of personality about him. Like he's very easy to approach. He's very approachable as a person. He's very hardworking. Like I can't remember the amount of times that he was sat in a call with me or Dan or Alan or all 3 of us, like just working on things. Like that really impressed me, is just how hardworking Dakin is, because one of the core traits that we're looking at is people who are going to be hardworking. As I've said before, like we're all working towards a goal, but there isn't going to be success, there isn't going to be achievement without significant work being put in. And that goes like for everybody, not just Dakin. That everybody needs to work hard towards their goals in order to achieve them. But Dakin really stood out as somebody that is willing to put in the extra work.
Yeah. And I mean, like Dakin's, as we've mentioned, playing for us in season 1. He's been around UK League of Legends for a while now, and the fact he's still willing to keep playing, especially at this level, and commit to the UK, it's just a testament, as you've said, how committed he is to sort of sticking at it and trying to improve in the long run, rather than trying to go up in as fast as he can, be through different leagues.
Sure.
I mean, the next player we announced after Dakin was Haas, and I mean, you've already briefly touched on Haas being one of our players from last season. Like, how excited are you to work with Haas again going into?
I was absolutely delighted that Haas decided to re-sign with us. Like I really enjoy Haas's company on a personal level. Like he's very important. He's very influential. He's almost acts as like the big brother of the team. He's always the person that's asking, like, boys, like what more can we do? Like what do we have to do in this situation? Like I think like that's kind of Haas's personality, and it shows in his education as well. Like he's a philosopher at heart. Like he's always asking people like the right questions. And for me as a coach, that's sort of at the heart of my coaching philosophy, is that people should be asked the right questions. And when you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. And Haas sort of shares that with me, in the sense that we are always asking to ask the right questions. And because Haas had such an impressive showing in the relegation tournament as well, I think both of our bot laners did, as I said with Greg. But Haas in particular has always been such a stalwart for the team. Like he's like, since I've known him and since I've been working with him, he's always been so impressive. So to have Haas back on the team, to have that voice of reason, and to have somebody as well that isn't afraid to like challenge authority. Something that I talk about quite a lot is if a coach, say in basketball, was to ask somebody to work on their vertical jumping skills, there are a lot of people that would just ask, how high, how long do you want me to jump? Haas is definitely the sort of person that would ask why. Like, why do you want me to do this? What's the benefit for me? And like, if I can't give him a good enough reason for him to like be doing certain things, to be like running certain drills, I'll have to stay with him until he gets an acceptable answer of like why I want him to do certain things, and that is something that is really, really important to me. So to have Haas back is an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and I mean, when you say players that sort of challenge your comments and ask for sort of a justification,
Yeah.
like one of the benefits there is that you can really establish a really valuable connection with that player and sort of establish trust. And
Mhm.
obviously that means that you can be more open, you can be a little bit more critical, and obviously it helps you both improve. Another player that's new to the organization but was competing in the UKL last split is Kum Kum, who's joining
Yes.
us as our ADC. So how does Kum Kum look to you as a player coming into the organization?
Me and the staff have spoken about this at length, and we have all agreed that Kum is very similar in to Greg in like his overall like progression, the way that he approaches the game, the way that he approaches learning. Like he's what really strikes me like in terms of how, like the strengths that Ali has is how quick he is to learn. He's a very fast study. He's always willing to like engage with the coaching. He's always putting in work. He never balks at anything that we try and tell him to do. Like he's always like very forthcoming. If I say, does this make sense? He's like, yes, coach, absolutely. Like let's do it. Let's run these things. And time and again, like he's displaying like his commitment to the coaching staff. He's displaying his commitment to the rest of the team, and already like he's shown such significant improvement. Like I'm really, really impressed with Ali so far. Like really impressed. I think I've been working with him for 2, maybe 3 weeks,
Mhm.
and like even since those 3 weeks began, like it's been really measurable improvement. And like in 2 weeks, I expect to see more, because that's the sort of person that Ali is. And that's not too dissimilar to how Greg was, but I think to be honest, Ali pulls it off better.
And I think one of the good things to mention about Ali as well is that he played on at London United in the
Mm,
UKL for 2 consecutive splits. So I mean, he's been tested at the UKL, which is where he previously competed, and he's been willing to stick with an organization and improve with a team, which is kind of the
yeah, for
philosophy
sure.
that we're trying to adapt. Uh, Having competed at the UKL for 2 seasons, do you think he's ready for this step up to the UKLC?
100%, 100%. I think it would be very misinformed if I said that he wasn't. London United, sorry, last split was a team that really impressed me. To be honest, I think out of all of the games that I coached in the regular split, that was one of the games that stood out the most, purely based on the fact that Ali was so good. Um, and like although London United they finished what fourth, I think, something along those lines, they just fell
Yeah.
short to Luton. Um, I think that was off the back of Ali doing really, really well. And I think to acquire such a talented player, such a devoted player, not just to like the study of the game, not just to try and improve himself, but also to help the organization as well. It's such a massive boon to have somebody like Ali. It's really, really good.
hmm I mean, moving up a position to mid lane, we
Mhm.
welcomed Tope, who's a very sort of unknown, very young talent, but
Yeah.
on paper, very talented. Do you want to give us a bit of
Mhm.
insight to Tope?
Yeah. So Topi, obviously, like being the number one player in Finland, or the number one mid laner in Finland, sorry.
hmm
Um, Obviously, like that was a challenge, not just for Topi, but also for us. It was a challenge of seeing somebody that is extremely good, extremely gifted at this game. Like I don't think I've ever seen anybody as gifted as Topi. Just naturally, like he is an absolute delight to work with in that regard, because it's constantly pushing me, constantly pushing my staff to to increase our own skills just to keep up with him, because he's so fast. Like, he's so quick at learning. Like, already, like, his mechanics are through the roof, and he's definitely going to be a great addition in that respect. But also, when we first met Tope, I think the reservation that we had was he is very shy. I think he's really nervous as well. And since I've been working with Tope, one of the things that we've been trying to do is like really bring him out of his shell, and he's really meeting that expectation. Like, he's putting in a lot of work. Like, he's trying his absolute like hardest. And being so young, I think it's quite natural that to perform in front of like a crowd of any size is a difficult task. But for Tope, I think he's getting there slowly. I think it might take a little bit more time, but obviously, like, that's at the end of the day, that's why we're signing players for 2 splits. We're signing them for a year, because we want to give them the opportunity to really show not just us, not just as an organization, but really show everybody else that he can do it, and he can do it for sure. Like, of course he can. Like, he's a really gifted kid. He's an absolute pleasure to work with. He's really funny. Like, when you can get him out of that shell, I think it's just it's getting him to that point where he's ready, and I think he will be, like, before too long.
And I mean, obviously, you've just touched on, although he's very gifted, like with talent-wise, he may lack that sort of competitive experience. Do you think a division like the UKLC is the perfect place for him to start that experience?
100%, 100%. I think the UKEL would be the quality would be too easy for him. We are always pushing for, like, especially in scrims, like, we're always pushing for like the highest quality that we possibly can, because I don't believe that anybody learns when they're not put under stress. I think that, like, that's the best place to learn. And I try and stress out the players, especially with the quality of the scrims that we get, the quality of our practice. And it's going to be one of those things. I think at the very least that now that we're playing in a division higher, it will allow Tope to get the practice that he needs, not just in solo queue. Like, obviously, like, playing at a challenger level is going to be good practice in and of itself, but playing in the UKLC is the level that Tope should start at. And to give him that opportunity is, I believe, exactly what Tope needs.
Okay. And then just moving up a role once again. So in jungle, we have a second jungler, Johnny Rico, who obviously played for us for 2 seasons. So this will be his 3rd season under the org. I mean, you touched on it briefly earlier, but I guess you can reiterate. So how does it feel to be able to work with Johnny again going into summer?
Well, I think I'd be remiss to say that Johnny was not the best player by far. Like, he was an absolute machine when it comes to, like, playing the jungle. I think his individual, like, mechanical skill is so much better than anybody else, to be honest. Like, I think it rivals Tope. I think the competitive StarCraft experience definitely does help in terms of, like, the micromanagement of the game. But also, like, the way that Johnny thinks about the game, like, he's very astute in the way that he thinks. And to be honest, from a coaching perspective, it really does help my ability, like, to prepare for games. When you have somebody like Johnny who you can sit down with and say, okay, this is what I want you to do in the game. Like, is this feasible? And then he'll be able to, like, critically analyze that and say, no, maybe, like, we can pick and choose. Like, we can do this, but we can't do this. And he's really good at making snapshot decisions. I think one of the things that we need to work on, or there's like a couple of things that we need to work on still, just like with every player, like, we're always pushing for maximum improvement. But I think with Johnny, like, we have to iron out a few kinks. But when we get there, I think he's definitely got the capacity to be, like, one of the top contending junglers for the league, for sure.
And I mean, he was awarded MVP jungler in the UKEL, and I think a lot of people for a while have been saying he needs this chance at sort of a UKLC level just to prove his ability and show that he is one of the better junglers within the UK scene.
Yeah.
And then the final position that we've got is our top lane, and we've got Shida from Mythos from last season. How's Shida settled into the organization?
I think he's settled in really well, to be honest. I've been very impressed with Shida's work ethic, to be honest. He started out on the development roster, and has since been moved up. But he, despite being on the development roster, he was always watching scrims. Like he was always watching my instructions for the games. Like he was always watching my instructions for the top lane. And quite to be honest, like he would always like message me in DMs and say like, is this the best course of action for top lane this game? And just along the same vein as Haas, like questioning the things that I'm saying, like Sheeta does it as well. And that's a really, really good skill to have, I think, is being able to like question authority, because it means that he's actually like considering and thinking about the game almost like at a higher level than what you'd expect of your average player. Because there's a lot of people that would just take things at face value and say, oh yes, coach, like I'll do X, Y, and Z, and if it doesn't work out, I'll be like, oh well, that sucks. Like Sheeta's always like his work ethic is really, really impressive, really impressive. I think for the most part, just Sean's very, very easy to get along with. He's an incredibly knowledgeable person about the game, and I think he's just very dedicated to the coaching as well. I think like the vast majority of players, if you ask them, they'd probably all say the same, that they're just very dedicated to the coaching. And I'm very grateful to like not just to Sean, but for all of the players, to be honest, to have that faith in me. But yes, like Sean is again like a really, really great asset to the team. I think you touched on that he was on Mythos, and obviously Mythos got relegated sadly, and they didn't have the best run last split. But I think Sean has really bounced back from that. Like he's really seen that as an opportunity to learn from, and he's come back swinging almost. Like he's doing really, really well.
I think it's always good as well as you've touched on, being on Mythos. Someone like Sean's potentially overlooked by a lot of teams that are sort of wanting to push for the best results. They might just not consider someone like that. But I guess a common theme across all the players is you've wanted players that really work with coaching, respond well to it, and are willing to be hardworking. Is that probably are those attributes that you really value in players when looking for talent to come on board?
I guess so. I think one of the things that I look for is just commitment. I think before I see any player in trials, like I always ask, what are your goals? Because I think first and foremost, like what I look for in a player is the desire to win. I like as much as a coach is sort of my duty to try and help players improve, which is like one of my top priorities. My main priority is to make sure that the players are winners. It doesn't necessarily matter. Like I think I was saying this earlier. Like the mark of a good coach is being able to take good players and help them to win. The mark of a great coach is being able to take sort of average players. Not that I'm saying that any of my players are average, but like take average players and push them to be great. And that's what I want to do. Like I want to make sure like if everybody's heart is in the right place, if everybody is committed to me, I think that's all that I can ask for, is people that are going to try their absolute best in order to achieve their goals, the goals that they want to do. Because as much as like I want to push my desire to win onto everybody else, that's not realistic. Like I can't push my ideals onto 5 people. Like it has to come from them. And every single one of the players that I work with wants to win. It's their goal to win the UKLC. And that's the mark of a really good player, is the people that have the heart and the guts to be able to strive for their own ideals.
And I mean, obviously we've just been through and talked about every player individually, but as a collective, as a unit, sort of how do you think they're going to perform against other rosters that have potentially competed at this level for a longer period of time?
Honestly, I think at the very least, like I try and say to players, don't see anybody else's like prior experience. Don't see these organizations like Resolve, just for instance, like don't see them as like some superhuman beings, like with the financing and the funding that's going to mean that we don't stand a chance. At the end of the day, like the people that we're playing against, they're just people. They are no different to everybody else that we play in scrims. They're no different to the people that you find on out walking on the street. I think we're going to really bring the fight to the UKLC. Like something that I try to push is don't take anything lying down. Just do all you can And if you know, at the end of the day we lose like certain games, if we lose every game, so long as we're trying, so long as we're really bringing the fight, it doesn't matter. It genuinely is one of the situations where I think everybody is raring to go. That everybody is up to the challenge. Like, for varying reasons. Like, everybody's got their own reasons, but everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to bring the fight, and that's going to be like the main theme throughout our split. I think is being able to just see people as human beings, just humanize all of these teams, and just stand toe to toe, and like win or lose, like we'll stand proud, like we will learn from our losses, and we will as will be I think the phrase is gracious in victory, humble in defeat, and that I think that's kind of like summing up how we're going to approach the split. Really, is we're just going to try and try and try and try again, and if it doesn't work, then we'll just keep going, and we'll keep moving.
And I mean, obviously, we've touched on it's also in the title of the stream. This is roster lock week, so
Yes.
from Wednesday on, all these rosters are going to be set in stone. And while I know that we don't know every roster for the other teams, we have some inclinations to which players might be used on rosters. Sort of, how do you think we fare up against other teams in the league at the moment? Do you think we're in a good position?
I see some teams as definitely being stronger than others. I see Lucent. Well, I probably shouldn't say names, but like I think there are some rosters that are looking, substantially or theoretically weaker than other teams. So I think London Esports will be a real high flyer this split. They did really well last split. They stood toe to toe with Resolve. I think they're going to be a team to look out for. I think Eminem as well. Obviously getting relegated from NLC. That can't have boded well with the organization. So they'll want to be playing to maximize their chances to get back to the NLC. But apart from that, I think every single roster is just looking as good as each other. Like, I think anybody that looks at a specific roster and says, "Oh, this is objectively better than another," I think is fooling themselves. I don't think like anybody can look at solo queue ranking and say, just like objectively, like this is going to be like one-sided to X or Y. I think it's just going to be a case of like, how hard are people trying to win at the end of the day? Like, you could have a bunch of like 5 grandmasters, 5 challenger players even, and they could completely flop because their desire to win is significantly less than a team that they perceive as being worse than them. So I don't think, like, maybe even to a certain extent, like we are advantaged in that respect, because we might be like underrated to a certain extent. Like, people might see us as the underdogs, and they might take away from the fact that we are still a really competitive and a really frankly good team. So I don't think there's anybody, like, maybe outside of London, that is going to be like superhuman beings or whatever. But even then, like, I guess giants are just targets. It's David and Goliath and all that jazz.
No, great insights, Harry. And at this point, that's all the questions that I had to run through. I think you've done a very stellar job of giving a lot of insight into our new pickups, Harry. And it's always a great pleasure to speak with you. I guess my final question is: do you have any closing remarks or anything you feel we've not touched on that you'd like to mention?
Not really. I think everybody should just, anybody that is a fan of the UKLC, I think you should keep open minds in terms of how well teams are going to do. I don't think you should like count any team out ever. That's not to say that we're already like coming in expecting to be the underdogs, but I think give everybody a chance is what I would say. Like, obviously, like, I want Viperio to do as well as is humanly possible, and for all of the Viperio fans, for anybody that doesn't like us even, watch out for us, because I think we're going to do really well this split.
No, thanks, Harry. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. And to all the viewers, we're very keen to be doing more of these streams throughout the split. Our plan is to get on players regularly so you can get insight from them firsthand. I know this is the first one we've done for summer, but we do plan on doing more. So if you do want to submit any questions in advance, feel free to reach out to us via direct message, or if there's a guest you'd potentially like to come on, it can be from the org or from outside the org. Let us know, because we're keen to get your feedback and make sure these streams are as valuable to you as possible. So once again, Harry, thank you for coming on and thank you for giving your insight. And thank you to all the viewers for tuning in. And I hope you've enjoyed this lunchtime stream, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks.